Welcome. I'm Stuart Siegel, financial aid guru for FAFSAassist.com. I'm also the founder of College Tuition Solutions. We've been in the field of college planning and financial aid for 24 years now. And I've been fortunate to help families on a number of college campuses over the years. I've been quoted by numerous newspapers and magazines, notably USA Today and US News. I serve on the board of the National College Advocacy Group, which is dedicated to bringing admissions and financial aid professionals together. And I created FAFSA Soft, a financial aid management system for professionals, so they can manage the financial aid process for their clients. And that's where we got the idea to make it available to all parents at a much lower cost to parents of college-bound students. And we named it FAFSA Assist. You should have the link to negotiating a better award package. It came with this webinar link as well. So I'll be referring to that maybe once or twice during the presentation. But before we begin, there are a couple of things I think you ought to know. About 11% of parents will be what is called full pay. And that means that the student receives no financial aid at all, other than an unsubsidized loan. And the parents still send them to send their child to that school. Now, private colleges and universities are much more likely to negotiate than a state school would, by a margin of 3-to-1. Now, the public university in your state is already subsidized by your state legislature, which makes it fairly difficult to charge you less than their published tuition and fees. Now, out-of-state public universities may offer in-state tuition to certain students. That would really be called a scholarship. Or be part of a group of states or a consortium that offers 150% of their in-state tuition, which would be, let's say, their tuition in-state is $10,000, and you're part of that consortium. You would only have to pay 150% of that, which would be another $5,000, total $15,000 in tuition. And this is sometimes the case in the upper central Midwest as well. But you will not be in a position to negotiate with those schools, or they may charge you up to 3 times their in-state tuition because they want you to subsidize their resident students. And also, most appeals are so poorly written and documented, or they're just not worthy. So much so that less than 5% of them actually work, which is why the information I'm presenting here is so critical. You are the consumer. You're the customer. You're in charge. The college education is a commodity, just like orange juice, pork bellies, soybeans. So regard them as unemotionally as you do your morning breakfast. Colleges are a business, a $680 billion a year business. And like any other business, they need customers. And they are not charities and they are not deities, and you shouldn't treat them as such. Colleges have a lower regard for you than you could possibly imagine. They have to, given what they expect you to pay. In my guide, Negotiating a Better Award Package, I wrote exactly what they think of you. Colleges also overcharge. Why do they do this? Because they can, and people pay what they ask. So treat colleges as you would any other expensive consumer purchase. Even houses in the most expensive neighborhoods, you can usually pay less. That's why you hire a real estate agent. Now, contrary to popular belief, most colleges are driven by revenue from tuition, not their endowments. Few colleges have the billions of dollars to rely on. There are very few Harvards, Yales, and Stanfords. And colleges need tuition dollars to keep their lights on. It's very expensive to run a campus, keep buildings and such. They need paying customers with money. And that's why they want lots of applicants so they can cherry pick for the ones they want. They need students like these so they can overcharge, then offer discounts for the very comfortable parents or comfortable families for a couple of reasons. They can still keep their prices up while giving a discount, which makes parents feel good. And so their college can still be affordable to those students who don't have as much. And financially, the colleges still come out ahead. Colleges have dorm rooms to fill up. They need heads in the beds, or if you want to use a more colorful analogy, cheeks in the seats. And colleges use some sophisticated predictive analytics and data analysis tools. And one of the many reasons they use them is to be able to offer the lowest amount of aid possible and still have your student enroll. And to learn more about prospective students, admissions use tracking software on their school websites. So when a student visits a site, the software automatically recognizes who the student is based on a piece of code they're going to stick in the computer. It's called a cookie. And every time the student goes back, the college is alerted to that. And they just, the website, if the student goes back, put in their name, some contact info, details about their life and activities, and that all gets sent to admissions. Also, any emails sent by the college to the student are measured. They actually measure not only if they were opened, but by how much time had passed before the student actually read it. They know all the pages views on the website and how long is spent on every one. And the software has a map showing the geographical location and what is known as an affinity index, which estimates the level of interest a student may have in attending a given school. For example, if a student has a score of 91 out of 100, that predicts she's highly likely to accept an offer of admission from that school. And this helps the college offer less money because the interest is high. Now, demonstrating interest in being admitted is fine, but if you want a discount, don't appear overeager. Your student gets an email from the college, let a day or two go by before they open it up. Except if they're getting a financial aid offer or the admission offer, which will come much later, of course. But colleges don't like students who apply that have never had any contact with the school. They call them stealth applicants. Now, let's talk about the Ivies and the near Ivies, like Stanford and Duke and the University of Chicago. These are known as the elites. All students that apply there are merit scholars, and they have all the applicants they could ever possibly need or want. They don't have to offer any carrots to get kids to enroll, but they do give financial aid based on financial need only, and you can appeal based on need, depending on your financial circumstances, if they've changed or something caused your situation when you filled out the forms to be such as an undue burden on the family, and you need some help. Okay? So, why do colleges award money in the first place? Well, it's bait. They're fishing for the best students they can find, helps them with the rankings. More students that apply means the more students they can reject, thus making them more selective, and that makes them more desirable to prospective students. And private schools also have to compete with those private colleges that have a history of being very generous with their aid and the lower priced state schools. So what they're looking to do is reduce some of that sticker shock. And a very good friend of mine's son just got into Tulane University in New Orleans, and the price tag is hair under $81,000. That's for 1 year. He received a grant for $15,000 in a student loan. So they're still going to have to pay about $66,000. About take some of the sting out of it. I told him to send his boy to UC Davis and save $30,000 per year. That's exactly what they're doing. Some colleges also address the cost of living in a differential if you live in cities like New York City or Memphis, because money doesn't buy as much as it does in a smaller city. They're aware of this. So why and how do the colleges do this? Well, another reason is recognition. Discounts can make the less competitive students with B's and some C's feel good, and that means they're more likely to attend because they got a scholarship or some sort of funding, and kids like to feel wanted and they want to be where they're wanted. The use of discounts because they know, or rather they use discounts because they know this increases enrollment, and if it didn't, they wouldn't offer any money at all. And many colleges, both public and private, use a matrix to determine which students will receive an automatic tuition discount. That's what we call them. They're discounts off tuition. Sometimes you can find these on the college's website. This is a fairly standard one, and you'll notice that on the left are the GPAs and across the top are the test scores. And these tiers are used to award merit money regardless of the student's need. This is good stuff to know. You want your child to apply to schools where their college capital, that's their GPA and test scores, is highest. And that's going to vary from school to school. By the way, speaking of test scores, just because a whole bunch of schools decided to let that go by this year. This is the right now we're looking at the 21-22 school year. A lot of colleges said you don't have to submit test scores, but many did, and the majority of those who did submit good test scores got in. Anywhere between it was 2/3 and 93% of students who submitted test scores. The more selective schools, those are the ones who admitted. So take those tests; they matter. So here you see your matrix, and on the lower left, you've got the 3.0 to 3.24 student, 17,000 as long as they have a test score, as you see at the top, 1130, 1120, or 2022 ACT, all the way up to a 1330 plus, 29 plus, 3.90 GPA, $32,000 discount. So you want to find out what kind of a discount looking, going forward, if you have other kids going to college, you want to see exactly what they might be offered. Okay. Negotiate versus appeal. Now, sometimes the words like negotiate and appeal are used interchangeably, but what differentiates them is that an appeal is based on financial need and the other is based on merit only, or what is really a coupon or a tuition discount. Financial aid administrators are by law required to review any appeal that you put in front of them. This is called professional judgment or professional judgment review. They may not honor it, but they have to read them. So don't think you're being pushy or rude in any way. Ideally, for an appeal, you would have already made your case to all the colleges your child applied to. But this isn't necessarily critical to success, but the later it gets in the spring, the pool of financial aid dollars could have shrunk. Although this year, I don't believe that's going to be the case. Now, was the offer your student received fair? Well, as you can see, there are many factors that go into the college's decision to award a tuition discount. And all of these, except comparing offers, are knowable in advance. Although I'm going to talk about a little later how you might be able to see financial aid letters from the student, from the schools your student is applying to with similar academics. And you might be able to get an idea. It's called tuitionfit.org, and I'll cover that at the end. So there's all these different factors that go in, like the family's expected family contribution, or what really amounts to the parents' contribution. That's a formula that considers income and assets and number of students in college. The institutional EFC, that's what the College Board uses, and about 200 competitive schools use that. Sometimes they include the home equity, which can really jack up that family contribution. Or say, look at the students' test scores and the GPA, and you want to know what's the history of awarding money. And eventually you'll get to the point where you're comparing offers. Now, you can look at schools' profiles of their admitted students and see how your student compares, and you can often get an idea how much money they might be offered as well by looking at various websites like College Board. Okay, let's talk about appeals first, because family situations can be complicated, and there are any number of special circumstances, unusual circumstances, that might be considered for a successful professional judgment review, or PJ, as it's referred to. Now, there are common mistakes that parents make that may not be caught by the financial aid office. I think you should know about how things are counted or assessed. Parents' assets are assessed at 5.64%, and a student's assets are counted either at 20% or 25%, depending on the college. Now, you'll want to correct any of these common parent asset errors, like retirement plan assets, business and residence values. College savings plans are often reported as student assets, big mistake, and they're not. They are owned by the parent, and the student is the revocable beneficiary, so you want to be sure you get that right. If the parents are now divorced or separated, you're going to want to report the income of the parent the student lives with most of the year, and not necessarily the parent who claims the student as an exemption. Now, when it comes to the assets in a divorced or in a separated situation, assets are in contest typically. The courts decide who's getting what. So assets should be zero when you file or appeal. You want to let them know that those assets are basically frozen. Um, and then there's household size. If the student's parent is remarried and the step parent has children who now live in the same household, those stepchildren should be included. They should also be included, even if they don't live in that household, if that step parent is providing more than half of that children's support, those children's support. If they are in college, those same children, then those students should be counted in the number of family members in college, as this will have a huge impact on the family contribution. Most people do not know this. So some questions you want to ask yourself before you begin an appeal. You need to have some sort of an idea as to what the bottom line is going to be. How much can you afford? What can you take out of income every year? What are your assets that you've saved? How much is going to be enough to be able to send your child to the school? If they offer you 8,000, you think you need 20, well, what are you going to do? You're going to have to walk on that, right? So be prepared to do that. You should, or at least be prepared to answer that question. Now, here's some things that can't be appealed. I've done many of them over the years, and I always hate to say, sorry, doesn't qualify. So I'm just going to give you a heads up right now. You don't appeal on things that you're spending money on that you don't absolutely need. Dining out or having meals delivered, frequenting fast food joints, buying luxury items, diamonds, jewels, big fancy cars, digital services, buying overpriced beverages or coffee when you can make premium coffee at home, buying name brand items instead of store brands. College consider all of these as frivolous expenses. Now, things that can't be appealed include consumer debt, okay? Because excessive consumer debt usually reflects lifestyle choices, and appealing for more money isn't going to work. However, this is the exception. If consumer debt is the result of loss of income or extraordinarily high or unavoidable expenses, and you take cash from a credit card, get a cash advance or take a home equity loan to cover those expenses, an adjustment might be made. Also not included, tithing expenses, voluntary charitable contributions, vacations, normal living expenses, your mortgage payments, rent payments, credit cards, that sort of thing, and any future things you're saving up for, like buying a new boat or something, not going to be accepted. So I don't specifically mention COVID because COVID could cover a great many situations, but we're looking at an increase or decrease of parent income. And when we talk about increases in income, typically these are one-time events and aren't to be repeated, at least not very often. So what are some examples of that? Bonus income, gambling, prize earnings, bingo money, employer reimbursements for moving expenses, an insurance settlement, which typically is tax-free. And I certainly wouldn't encourage people to put that on their tax return. I mean, it's non-taxable. The IRS doesn't need to know about it. And if they do, you can tell them about it. But that way it keeps off your darn financial aid forms. Vacation and sick days paid due to termination or prior employment. Early distribution of IRAs, individual retirement accounts, or a retirement plan income. And a conversion of a traditional IRA to a Roth IRA. These are all one-time events typically. They cause an increase in income. The distribution of retirement funds might be made to cover medical bills, for college tuition, or to cover shortfalls from some sort of a disaster of some kind. This could be from a hardship distribution from an IRA, and that's going to cause income to show up on your return. Recognized decreases of income include, a job loss, salary reduction, hours cut, or worse, the death of a parent. There's also casualty losses, fire, theft, earthquakes, mudslides, floods, sinkholes, meteors, a jet engine falling on your home, you name it. Expenses that significantly reduce the income of a family so as to disrupt their daily living can be considered in an appeal. And then there's income losses from businesses. Now, many people own small businesses. Tax laws allow business owners on Schedule C to be reported as income losses on page 1 of their 1040. Gets transferred over there. reducing adjusted gross income and lowering the calculated parent contributions. But colleges get a little fussy about this when the reported losses are not the result of a real income reduction to the family or what is known as a paper loss. For example, depreciation of business assets and property don't affect the family income. These losses affect taxable income, but not financial aid income. They just add it back in, just like retirement contributions are added back into income because they are considered discretionary. But retirement contributions are considered discretionary. Crazy. But there may be situations where losses are real and should be allowed to reduce family income just like the normal business expenses like rent or advertising or legal fees. So if there was a judgment made against the business from a lawsuit or a one-time payout for a liability or anything of that nature that isn't normally counted as a business expense, you would want to appeal on that. Financial aid administrators generally follow the rules established by the IRS when it comes to which medical expenses they're going to accept. Now, these must be or have been deemed medically necessary, as found by a qualified medical professional. Expenses can include health insurance premiums, expenses not covered by insurance, copays, deductibles and costs for medical equipment, and certainly, if a job is lost, COBRA premiums, which can be frightfully expensive. Another thing that's extraordinary would be considered extraordinary medical expenses that cause a reduction in work is caring for a family member or a relative. Hospital bills can cause a debt the family will have to pay for over a year or more. Medical costs could impact what a parent earns in the future. And oftentimes, there are expenses that are unreimbursed, like dependent care costs for a special needs child, such as support services or tutoring or other disability-related expenses, or for an elderly relative, such as 24/7 nursing care. Other financial windfalls include unusual bonuses, inheritances, or a divorce settlement. Rental income and losses, as I said a minute ago about a small business, there's a big difference between a paper loss and a cash loss. Cash loss you want to report is when you have properties that remain vacant for a period of time and you incur real expenses such as mortgage payments, utilities, property taxes, repairs. If you're not bringing in rent, you're going to have to pay that out of pocket. And the death of a parent is a serious thing, and that's going to cause income losses typically because financial aid is based on the prior year when a parent passes away after the signing of the FAFSA. The surviving spouse or the student should notify financial aid immediately. And then there's the end of child support. And it could be that child support ends at by the time the student graduates high school, or it could be that the divorce settlement doesn't include an educational clause or one that will only pay for a state school or a specific amount. In the case of a student receiving Social Security benefits, you'll want the college to know that when the student turns 18, that they're going to lose their benefits. You think that a college would know that, but oftentimes they just sort of overlook that, don't pay attention to it. So you want to bring that to their attention. There are literally dozens more special circumstances, which is why financial aid administrators take each appeal on a case-by-case basis. Their word is final, and there is no appeal that can be made to the president of the college, don't bother going there, or to federal student aid or the Department of Education. The financial aid administrator has sole discretion and is the final word. So let's talk about writing a winning appeal letter. And I have something here that you may want to use as help. But you need to answer some questions first. And I think these are very helpful to know and answer so you put together a letter that shows some things that might not show in some of these templates that you can look at or use. So if, let's say, what happened? Business isn't good and hours have been cut or something like that. What does it mean when that happens? You have to assign some numbers to them. I'll make $1,200 less per month, which means changing our financial priorities. What are we doing to improve the situation? Well, we're looking for a new job, getting rid of the dish, not going out to dinner anymore, canceling the family vacation, We're going to buy a new used car, but now we'll make do with the Highlander we have from 2013 that has 127,000 miles on it. We're going to be making coffee at home. Uh, you know, finally, what do you want? You want to ask for more financial aid, but you can't put a number on it. They're going to put they're going to use their formulas, and they're going to give you a number, and they're not going to care about what you think you need. They're going to tell you what they believe you qualify for, and that's pretty much going to be it if you get anything at all. Okay, some guidelines. You're going to write a letter, or you're going to use their special circumstance form. You need to go check their website to see how it works. Just go into financial aid under forms. Typically, you'll see something about special circumstances. So, to reiterate what I just said, include specific examples, gather the documentation just enough to make, to explain in third party demonstration of what you're, proof of what you're saying. Don't ask for a specific amount of money. Um, don't try to bargain in the appeal letter. Don't say, well, we got so much money from this school. That's a different thing. At least don't do it at first. And be honest. Be honest with them about what you want. Don't lie. They're really good at catching lies. They've been doing that a lot longer than you've been applying to college. And once you've written that letter, let them know it's coming. Send it by certified mail. You should hear back within a week. And if it's a fair decision, respect it. If you have other offers, need-based offers that are more than what you have, then say, well, you know what, we appreciate what you've done, but you're still not going to be affordable. These other schools are. Now, this is the example of an appeal letter. And here's the website I want you to go to find that, and you'll be able to find any number of situations that this would work. So, talk about some do's. Ask for professional judgment. Be short and to the point, no more than a page and a half. Describe the circumstances, put in a dollar amount of what has happened, include the proper documentation, and be polite and businesslike. This is a business letter after all. Things you don't want to do is you don't want to focus on the students' accomplishments. They're already admitted. They don't care about that. It's wasting time and space. Don't write a letter about better offers unless it's a Hail Mary. This is not a negotiation. And when you send other offers, that's exactly what it'd be. And you don't want to do that. That's a different situation, and we're going to get to that. Don't be general. We want more, can't afford. The economy is bad. No, I lost my job and I'm losing $1,200 a month or whatever it is. And this is what we're trying to do to help ourselves. And don't demand or threaten. If we don't get enough money, we can't send our kids, or whatever. Just, you know what I mean. Don't demand or threaten. Be polite. It's a business letter. Now, not every situation you can appeal for. Some schools, they look at the quality of the student. And when I say quality, I mean GPA and test scores. And you'll see here, this is just something that would not work. And this came from the school. It was Worcester Polytech in Massachusetts. And you can read the third factor, while institutional aid is based on need, it's also based on other factors related to the student's desirability. While Kyle was admitted to WPI and would no doubt do well here, he is not at the top of WPI's applicant pool. There's nothing you can do about that. Now, sometimes financial aid offices make mistakes. This is where you need to be up on all this so you know what your EFC is and what the students typically get, and really look at the award letters you're getting, especially if you're going to commit to a school. Now, this one was from Duke, and this was corrected. I'm not going to read it, but they added a $20,204 in grant funding for the year, and they apologized. So when this is the result of an appeal, and I don't have to tell you, but send a thank you note. So I'm telling you, a real one that's written and delivered by a woefully inadequate postal service. Don't get me wrong, I love the mail. I love the postal service. My wife's father was a postmaster. Okay, documentation guidelines, just enough to prove your point. You don't want to send 10 pages when one page will cover it. The colleges need more information, they will ask. And it has to relate to the special circumstances and shows the financial impact. The documentation should be in writing. There should be copies, not originals. You don't want to send originals to anybody, um, ever, except the IRS, but make copies, keep those for yourself. Now, you may include third-party documentation from an employer or the state or whatever is required. So here's documentation for loss of jobs or decreased income, recent tax returns, pay stubs, termination notice, severance package. The reason that is asterisked is because typically when you lose your job and you receive a severance package and you try to appeal at that time, they're going to say, well, if you haven't found new work and your severance has run out, then we'll entertain your appeal. Okay. Examples of that you'd want to document for a windfall, some kind of distribution that you've received, maybe from an IRA, or a settlement of some sort, or your employer owed you back pay, something like that. Um, Examples of medical expenses. These are bills that you paid during the previous year, and also bills you're maybe paying right now. You may want to create a spreadsheet of estimated costs for the current year and even what you know is going to be coming up in the following year. Now, divorces can be expensive in a number of ways. A few here are expenses for a second household. The non-custodial parent, which is what we call that person, mom or dad, they have to live somewhere. They have to pay rent or a mortgage. They have utilities, certainly. They're paying their own insurances. And this, of course, is beyond any alimony or child support that is being paid to that non-custodial parent. Educational, or rather by the non-custodial to the custodial parent. Educational expenses for a child living with the parent in the new household. Okay, for instance, private elementary school. Some schools look at that, and any legal expenses you might have had as a result of a divorce. This can be quite expensive. Often is. So some other mistakes are, not making reasonable requests. Financial aid employees make very little money, and they certainly don't want to be abused. And that includes by asking for unreasonable sums. If you make $100,000 and you want $20,000, for example, that's for you, and they make 35 to 55, they don't have a lot of they don't really have a lot of compassion, to be honest with you. These people they're looking at what it is that is causing your situation, what is the dollar amount, and what can their formulas, how can they adjust for that? That's what they're looking at. Giving too much information, especially in a letter, going beyond maximum a page and a half, not being respectful. And just if you're not capable of really writing well, ask your student or somebody who can help you, because bad syntax and grammar just makes it hard for people to get through to understand what you're asking them. I remember not too long ago, before COVID especially, people would want to go to the financial aid office on a visit. April's here, we want more money, we want our child to see the college. But I really do think it's just better to use the mail or email instead of making an appointment to go see somebody in person, because you might say something that doesn't really benefit your case. You might say something that really, goes contrary to what you just written. The old expression, loose lips sink ships, really does apply here. You have nothing to gain by going in person. And because documentation is everything. And if they have questions, they will be specific and they will ask. I've seen enough of them. But I've also seen heard about people opening their mouths with the students crying and the parents crying and the financial aid officer throwing a box of Kleenex at them as they run down the hall and wait for you to calm down. They don't like histrionics very much. So if you don't succeed, well, take another shot at it. If the letter was not written well, rewrite it. If you have better documentation, use it. Because persistence often pays. And, after all of that, if you've appealed and you still get from the financial aid administrator, final word is no, well, they're the Supreme Court. You really, there's no other court to go to. As I said, you can't go to the president of the college and you can't go to the Department of Education. It's done. So you'll have to make some decisions at that point. Now let's move on to negotiation. This is where it's a lot more pleasant and um, isn't quite as stressful and doesn't involve quite so much documentation. All right. I call this the magic three-step formula, but it's really just based on 3 emails. And uh, they're usually sent in sequence. Now, the first one could work. A second is usually needed, and maybe a third, as in 3 times a charm, might do it. Um, these emails are in your guide that I sent you. Okay. Now, this is kind of tough for most people, negotiation. We don't do it very often. And when we do, it's usually over something insignificant, like, who's going to get the last piece of chicken. Um, Higher priced items, it gets a little scary, especially when there's a lot of money on the line in real estate. You have an agent to help negotiate for you. But negotiating for more help is something that you are going to have to do on your own. But what I'm about to share with you is easy, easy peasy lemon squeezy. And believe me, they won't take away the aid your child received, and they can't take away the offer of admission. Certainly not for these reasons. You have nothing to lose by trying. Always go for more financial aid. Don't accept. We don't negotiate. If the first choice college is going to cost more, say so. So I like the ASK acronym, seems to work really well here. Ask and you shall receive, seek and you shall find, knock and it will be open to you. Now, I'm no biblical scholar, but I do know this much. If you don't ask, you don't get. So how are we going to do this? Well, first of all, you should know that awards are not etched in stone. Don't let them tell you that. Don't be fooled that this is the best offer, because the colleges are programmed to give you the least amount possible and still get you to enroll. So they may have made a mistake in that. And if other schools want you or want your student, then it may not be the best offer you get. And don't go for loans right away. Don't decide, well, they didn't give us enough. I guess I'll just take a student loans. Okay, kid has the skin in the game, but I'll take a private loan. Before you go that route, try all these first. Okay. So to improve your odds, this is what should have happened. And if you have other children coming up, this is what you will do in the future. The student's college list, most important. The colleges you picked or your students picked to apply to has more to do with what you're going to pay in the end than any other factor. That goes with financial planning or anything, because the discounts are going to come from the school. And you want at least 50% discount. This is for a private school. Okay. Students target colleges that they want to attend, but they should be in the top 20% of the applicants applying. They should apply to colleges that award the most money. This can be found on the internet, and colleges outside the known universe for leverage. They should apply to schools, 6 states away. Those colleges don't know you're applying. If you live in South Carolina, they know you're, looking at Montana. If there's a college you like and they have a history of giving money, why not? You may use it for negotiation. You use it for leverage. Really what this is all about. Okay. So some schools have some instructions for this. Most don't. So that's the reason for the emails. Now, after you send the first email, you may get emails back asking for certain information. I had a student just yesterday was asked, or at least the mother told me yesterday, that the student was going to have to fill out an application for a special merit award that was unknown to them, and then submit a couple of letters of financial aid awards from other schools with that. Very interesting. So, negotiation. Follow the school's instructions, be very respectful. You're going to see those emails. Have your other offers ready, but don't just jump the gun and send them right away. And you're going to be talking directly to admissions. Let's talk about who you're going to talk to. In the guide, it tells you who to start with. And just briefly, if the student has an admissions representative, with whether it's the letter of the last name of that student or the state or region, that's the person you're going to want to send to. There's further instructions if that is not the case. Keep in mind, folks, you're the consumer, you're the buyer, you're in the driver's seat. Colleges do not have as many applicants as they used to. They're in panic mode right now. Take advantage of their anxiety. What anxiety? Well, their very existence being determined nationwide by a bunch of 18-year-olds, and they're pretty uncomfortable with this reality. So hit them while they're down, hit them hard, and remember, they are overcharging you. But don't ask for more money. You're going to be asking for help. And you're not going to say negative, stupid stuff like your offer sucks. Of course, your kid would never say that. I'm just kidding. But you may have to search for the admissions counselor name when you go in there. So just take a look and you'll follow these folks down the list. But chances are, if you write to the dean, nothing's going to happen. They don't really handle this stuff. It may end up there in a committee if they sit in on those meetings to offer more money. But generally, it's going to be an assistant associate, somebody like that. And the best way to communicate is for the student to email the person themselves from their own email account, or you do it using their email account. Now, you don't want to show your cards right away. And by that, I mean you don't want to send any other offers your child received, not yet. And here's what those emails look like. Now, you have them in the guide, but basically we're just hoping, to get a little help, that you're acknowledging that, you do have some other offers, and this is my first choice school. Can you help me out? And it's signed appropriately. And if they say no, well, just ignore them. And you make a slight change, well, two actually. In fairness to you, I have the larger offers, and then you are now going to include those. You're going to attach those other college offers. Okay. If they come back again and they say no, let them know that perhaps you weren't clear in your previous requests for help. Okay. It's really a good idea to keep going with this until finally they say no. And so that's why I highlighted that. And then at the bottom, you say you've attached copies of other colleges for their review. Okay. Now, notice I didn't suggest anything in any of these letters with finality, as in I won't attend if you don't give me what I want. So now the ball's in their court. And by the way, never accept the college's statement says our offer is non-negotiable. They're trying to gaslight you. Simply, that's it. They just don't want you to go away. It's like going to your healthcare insurance company. You want to get something covered and they just keep ducking you. So don't believe that. All offers are negotiable. The intimidating statements that parents accept and something colleges are counting on. That's because they don't think a whole lot of you. They don't think highly of you. They're asking you to pay a whole lot of money, and it's all overpriced. Believe me. After all, why would any sane person fork over up to $320,000 over 4 or 5 years for a teenager with pimples? If the college comes back and matches the offer of your second choice, you win. Okay. So we don't have any competing offers. Well, you probably read this as I've been yakking because I advanced the slide too quickly. Basically, you just have to go for it and hope for the best. If they come back with a no, you can send back the last correspondence you wrote with a note that says, perhaps I wasn't clear in my request for help, and just say that. Now, I do have a few final words here, and I'll give you a couple of resources in a moment. Not every situation is going to fit. There's so many different situations. There's really too many that I couldn't possibly cover. Maybe some I've never even heard of. But use the formulas and find out if it's a school that uses the CSS profile, is home equity going to be included? Because they're certainly asking for it on that form. You don't want to use any negative statements. Always be positive, just like a student's essay. Always be positive, never negative. Ask for help. Never ask for a specific amount of money. And the student will always sign the negotiation. Um, in appeals, the parents take care of that. That's in the name of the parent. And be patient. The closer to the deadline, colleges often honor requests for more money very quickly because as May 1st gets, it's sort of like they've got a whole bunch of cars on the lot. They have to meet their quota. And some schools, they just might even preemptively, without being asked, just offer you a few thousand more dollars. So don't be in a rush. Now, here's some resources that I like. Uh, it's formswift.com, and that is for your financial aid appeals. You'll find lots of templates for that. And then if you don't have any letters to negotiate with, you can open up an account with tuitionfit.org/FAFSA assist. And all you have to do is open an account and upload the one letter you have, and that's a free account. You won't have to pay anything. So if there are parents watching today who have other college-bound children, I can't overemphasize the need to carefully evaluate the colleges your students apply to. Students are going to be treated differently at different colleges. They're special to you, but not necessarily special to as many colleges as you'd like them to be. So know your numbers, know your EFCs, find out what the target schools are going to best afford. You'll be able to afford. And if you have special circumstances, be prepared in advance to let financial aid know about it. Even if they need sensitive school, don't give any money. Well, you have nothing to lose because why entertain a school that you're never going to be able to afford in the first place? So your child's college list has to be carefully curated, and by doing that, it's going to allow you to pay the least amount possible. I wish you success, and I thank you for attending. It's been my pleasure.